The press conference, coach will start off an opening statement. Please raise your hands and wait for microphones for questions.
My opening statement, Jimmy, is what do you have on your agenda today?
I don't know if you've had a chance to address your team. If you have you talked to them about being ranked #1, and have you given them advice on handling that?
Well, not, we always are talking about where we are, and as opposed sitting down and talking to them, we're in practice, and after practice yesterday when obviously the rankings came out, we haven't talked about it, but I think the key, and I think they know this, is that we know what our foundation is. We got to continue to build that, and we've got a pretty simple goal. We just want to be the best basketball team that we can be, and we know that we've got room for improvement. We know we have to improve. There's no doubt that again, I'm proud of these guys because they've built this, and we talked about it. It had nothing to do with the rankings. It had to do with where we are playing and how we're playing right now. And you go back 2 years ago with Kyle Alexander, Lamonte, and Turner, and Admiral Schofield, and Brad Woodson, and Lucas Campbell. They've been here. They know what it's like to lose 16, 17, 18 games. And when you see what, 4 years later, but, we remember those things. And the fact that when you think about where we are right now, and obviously it's something that they should be proud of, but they also know we're in the middle of basketball season, and it doesn't get you anything other than the attention and notoriety it brings. But they've dealt with some attention and notoriety people probably didn't think they would have had a year ago. And it still goes back to where you have to stay grounded in terms of your everyday work ethic, your everyday mindset, to know that we're trying to build something that's sustainable. And to do that, it's just a daily commitment. And knowing what your foundation is and trying to make it as strong as you can make it every day.
Rick, you touched on it a little bit. I'm curious also how you found out you're #1, and what do you think it means to this team as a whole?
Well, when we got through with practice, obviously, before it ever happened, you knew there could be a possibility of that. But 1, 2, 3, 4. The fact that we are, again, I think is a compliment to our players. I don't think there's any question. They're the ones that have put the hard work into it. I think it's a compliment to our coaching staff, to our university, the commitment. I think it's a great compliment to our fan base. And I think it says a lot about Tennessee basketball because we've got a history here. And it goes back, this university had been ranked #1 in basketball before. And you go back as far as you want to go to the Ernie and Bernie days. And I think it's a compliment that these guys have continued to try to build this program to the level that we'd all like to see it and see if we can keep it there. But we haven't made a big deal about it. And I won't make a big deal about it because they read what they read, and the big things that we've tried to teach these guys is that people. We're glad people are excited. I'm glad for our guys that they are. But I will still go back to my first year here when we were struggling just to try to stay competitive. Our fan base was tremendous, and I will, that's what I remember as much as anything, and where we are now, and right now it's as simple as, can we continue to again be the best team that this team wants to be, and that's where we've got to keep our focus.
Coach, you've sort of touched on it a little bit, but if you look at the top 20, you probably don't have a player on your roster that was recruited by any of those other schools. What does it say about getting the program to this point? What does it say about your players, your staff, your player development, that you're the #1 team in the country with the kind of the kids that you have on this team?
Well, one thing it says a lot about our staff, Rob Lanier and Mike Schwartz and Des Oliver and our support staff, everything here. But it says a lot about our players, that they were willing to want to come in and buy into a system, a culture. But I go back, those 5 guys I named, they built this culture. And every coach has been here, we've had terrific coaches here, and we all have had different cultures. And when I came in, you guys know better than me, I was the 3rd coach in 4 years, 5 years? And so you think about that group of guys that we inherited, they probably didn't know if they were going or coming at the time. And so when we came in, the 3 guys that we brought with us, well, Admiral was here, but, you know, he hadn't been really exposed to anything other than the recruiting process. Kyle, obviously, Lamonte, obviously, and the one guy, and I've said it before, that I'll always be thankful for and I'm blessed to have coached is Kevin Punter, because he did buy in, and he was the very first one to buy in, and we know how that went with him, and so I think and when you're trying to establish your culture, not that the other cultures are any different, but what we wanted to do, I think you've got to give a lot of credit to. Again, I go back to the facilities that we've been able to create. One of the first things we wanted to do was really have a great weight room, because our weight program, conditioning program, is really important to our player development. And we had a small one, and Dave Hart made that change. And he was willing to give us more space so we could really have a great facility that way. And then, you know, the locker room, you know, we weren't in a locker room really for 3 years. And so it's a lot of people that have made this where we are right now, but we all know that we can get better, and that we've got to continue to improve. But the players, I mean, it's not easy to walk in a locker room when you're a young freshman and you're hearing noise from guys that have had to deal with 3 head coaches and not know, like I said, if you're going or coming, and for them to buy in. And I actually talked to them about that yesterday, about, hey, we know where we were, and we know where we are now, but we're not where we want to be. And that's why you have great respect for those programs that sustain it every single year. And so it's a combination of a lot of people coming together and being blessed that they see some things together. But again, we still have work to do.
Stephen, Mike.
Jordan and Williams also were both, after the game Saturday, talking about needing to get back to the mindset y'all had defensively last year. You look at the stats, it seems there isn't really much of a change from where y'all are defensively last year versus this year, with points allowed, field goal percentage, and the like. What do you think is the difference between where you were last year defensively and this year?
The sense of urgency with the fix-it plays when you're going to get beat, as much as you try not to be, but someone there to make the next play for you, and then someone there to help him. As much as you can, basketball terms, help the helper. You know, doing your work early, away from the ball, rebounding, and that's there's no doubt has been our foundation. And I think our guys would tell you, in all honesty, that I think they know we've improved offensively, and I think that when you have that mindset that you think you can go out and outscore people, that there's a tendency to let down in areas that you know you shouldn't. And I think that's what we've been trying to get across the last couple of weeks, that you know, I do think we've improved offensively, but I want to see us have that mindset defensively, that not only can we be where we were a year ago, but we can be better. Because I could go back and tell you that we've got to get better there, and it's plain and simple. We have got to continue to get better defensively.
So you're saying your foundation, you're saying the defense has been.
That's what when you go back to where we were 2 years ago and where we got last year, the biggest change in our program was we finally, a year ago, got where we could defend people. For 2 years, we couldn't, and we didn't. You know, we were a half-court team trying to protect the basket as much as we could. Last year, we had great guard play in the backcourt, trying to get down the floor 94 feet, and we haven't consistently done that. And some of that has to do with the fact that we're down. We talked about that early in the year, but now we're getting back to full strength, and we've got to get back to that.
Mike, then Charlie, and Wes.
Rick, you had a team at Texas in 2010 that was ranked #1 at this point, then really struggled down the stretch. What do you remember about that season, and does that kind of speak to what you're saying about how important it is to keep improving right now?
Yeah, we had a team, and again, I'm not sure, you know, at the time, I'd have to look at the schedule and see how that thing came about, but you can't compare these two teams. You really can't. It's a totally different. That goes back to what really Rob was saying about this group of guys were not recruited. There was a lot of guys on that team that were highly recruited. So there's a whole different mindset, a different makeup, and I think the biggest thing is that what you take from it is this group of guys, I think they understand they really need each other. I'd have to really think long and hard about that group, and I don't have time to do it really. But with this group right now, I trust the fact that they want to get better, and that's what I believe. And you know, the one thing you have to talk about is all the outside noise you hear and all this. But they've dealt with some of that already since a year ago. But certainly, it's us staying grounded as a team, trusting each other, and I think these guys will.
Coach, what are your thoughts on Vanderbilt?
You know, I've got a lot of respect for Vanderbilt and Coach Drew and the fact that, you know, they've had to deal with some tough situations. You know, they had a terrific recruiting year, and one of the main guys and a guy that you certainly could build a team around gets hurt early, and then for him to have to sort of change directions and go back and then start trying to put different guys in. And you look at it, you admire coaches that have to go through that. And if you've been in it long enough, we've all have to go through it and probably have gone through it. But the same thing, I think his team is they're going to play hard, they're going to fight, they're going to work hard at executing what he wants done, and they're really, again, I said they've got really good offensive schemes where they can spread you out. They shoot the three. And we know on any given night we witness it, that some guys can get going and they're hard to deal with. But I think he's certainly with his program is getting his foundation and getting his culture in place. And I know personally that takes some time to do. And then, like I said, he's had some setbacks with some injuries it's tough when it happens. And but he's going to do a great job, and he has, and he's going to continue to do that.
Rick, I know much has been made of sort of playing at Vandy and the challenges that are unique to that building. Do you think with such a veteran team that you have that makes it a little bit easier to handle some of those situations for at least half the game?
Again, I don't know. I just think that when you go play basketball, you know, you play. I don't believe the players or maybe you'd have to ask them that if it's different for them with the coaches not being on the sideline. But I think when they're playing, the ball's up in the air and moving, I think they're locked in, or they should be with that. And you know, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Rick, when you got here and met with Kevin Punter, how long did it take him to buy in, and how long did that take to trickle down to other guys in the program?
Well, the fact that he was here, and when the other guys I mentioned, they weren't here yet. They weren't here. And so that spring, you know, when we were instilling our program and getting guys to come in, you know, he was the guy that was over the top with it, like, hey, because, you know, I told him about his shot. I said, your shot's never going to pass the eye candy test. And I said, you need to get it right. And he said to me, I'll do whatever I need to do. And he literally would go 2,000 shots a day. I mean, starting from ground zero. And he got frustrated at times. And I said, hey, I told you it wasn't going to be easy. And I said, and it can't happen unless you make it happen. And he did it. And so when those other guys got here in the summer, he was the one guy that they had their eye on. And they watched how much time he put in the gym. They watched it. And I actually asked Kyle Alexander the other day, I said, you've been here, and we know where you started. We know how much time you put in. Has anybody in the program put more time in than you? And he said, well, yeah, I think AD has. You know, he said, I think that. But I think if you asked AD that, I mean, and he had come out of a situation where he understood that you had to put time in and work at it. But I do think it helped him, too, having just one guy in Kevin Punter where he said, hey, that guy's in the gym. I'm going to be there, too. And Kevin has been in, again, he's right there for that 1 year as much as any guy we've coached. And once it started clicking for him, and it clicked a couple months earlier than I thought it would. But, I mean, he was always in there. I will never forget the fact, and again, to give you the kind of culture that we wanted to build, when he had gotten hurt at the end of the year, he came over to me one day and he said, Coach, what do you think I need to do? And I said, I think you got to shut it down. I said, I don't think you can be effective. And he walked out of the gym and he said, I feel better. He said, I feel that way too. And I will never forget this. The next morning I walked in Pratt Pavilion at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I hear the ball bouncing, and I walk in there and it's Kevin Punter. I said, what are you doing? He said, Coach, I slept on it last night. I've got to give it one more chance. And I said, and he came to practice that day, and at the end of that, it didn't take long. He said, I can't do it. But that is something that that you admire. And so that's why I can't talk about our foundation without mentioning him, because he is really was the lead guy on it.
Rick, you've talked a lot about just trying to get that defensive mindset back. Do you think that maybe the last 10 minutes of the second half, when you really had to rely on the defense, that could have been the step in the right direction that you all needed?
Yeah, I hope so. And again, I think you got to give Alabama a lot of credit. We jumped on them, and I thought and it's my fault. I had the guys probably too emotional. During this time of year, you have different ways you try to get guys motivated. And you go back a year ago, they hit us hard. We'd come off a big win at Kentucky, and we go down there and they beat us by 28 points. And I thought that when we came out playing really, really hard, but if you get overly emotional before the game, and it probably started the night before, that wears you out. It really does take your energy from you. It really can. And there was a part through the game there where I felt we were tired, and we talked about it yesterday, and the players admitted to me that they were overly anxious, overly emotional, and that's my fault. That's my fault, because I want to keep them on a steady keel, and I want them to go out and. But the fact is, at the end of the game, when we had to make some plays, we did. I mean, you go back, whether it's Grant's block, the last play, we were everybody was locked in, and I think I'm trying to think who was. I know AD ended up on Petty when he got called for traveling, but you look at the tape, everybody was locked in, as was Alabama on the last play with Grant Williams. Got called for a charge, which he charged. So yeah, I do think that I'm hopefully that we were when we needed to get some stops at the end, we were able to do that, and that's something I hope we can build on.
Rick, two things. Do you take any personal satisfaction of being one of only 6 coaches to take 2 different teams to a #1 ranking?
Well, Jimmy, I've been blessed. I'm telling you, God's blessed me in so many ways. I think about every stop I've been along the way. I've had just incredible people. I have, and I can go back to George Mason with that situation in Providence, great basketball tradition, and keep going with it. But I don't think in terms of that, to be honest with you, because I think anything that when notoriety comes to the head coach, it all has to go to everybody. I mean, we're a family with everything that we do, and I've said it before. I would not be where I am without and I've always felt if I've done one thing right, I've always tried to hire people that I think are better than me, and I think I've done that. And and then we've always understood, those people have always understood that recruiting is the lifeblood of what we do, and then we've tried to create a family atmosphere everywhere we've been, and try to let everyone know that everybody's important, and I hope we've done that, and I hope we've taught these guys how to grow up and be good Christian guys, men, and want to understand that this is all kind of fleeting, so we just got to take advantage of it while it's here.
And through the years, have you found it easier to coach a 3-star who was under-recruited or a 5-star who was recruited heavily?
Well, I think that we've been fortunate to coach one guy that I think is going to go down as one of the greatest players ever in Kevin Durant. And really easy to coach him because he had passion. I don't know what, and I could name a bunch of 3, 4-star guys, but Admiral Schofield, Kyle Alexander, Grant Williams, Lamonte Turner, Jordan Bone, those guys, Jordan Bowden, those guys have passion the same way. Now, they didn't have the notoriety that a Kevin Durant, so I think it's an individual thing. And if we coach 5-star guys that thought we had magic dust we're going to sprinkle on them and it's going to work, yes, and it never works. There's no secret to this. And I think the one word that separates it all is passion. I think that most everyone we recruit, we feel have physical ability, and we hope mentally they understand it. But the fact of the matter is it gets down to their commitment and their willingness to be part of a program, to be a great teammate, and work as hard as you can to separate themselves so that one day that if they have a dream of playing at the highest level, they can get there. But I think it's all individualized. And that's where I go back to our coaches. I think they understand what we're trying to, how we want to do it. And when they go out recruiting, their evaluations are so important. And then we believe in, once they get here, if they're willing to buy into it, we can make it work for everyone.
Coach, how big of a part has Garrett been, and Garrett Mendenwald, in what you guys have been able to do? And how is it a shock to some kids when they get here how big of a part the strength and conditioning is of what you're doing?
You know, I do think it's, I think you go in and you start recruiting and you start talking about your program and you're going to be as transparent as you can be with everyone. And the one thing you talk about working, and I think most people think that they work. I do. I think they work. But they don't, because that's what they've been exposed to, but they don't really truly understand, and we don't truly understand how hard if they can figure it out until we're with them. And so when they come in, and the way the rules have always been set up through the years, they've changed now, but your strength conditioning program, that's who was with the players the most. And I go back to, you know, what we had built at Texas with Todd Wright, and Garrett came under him, and I've said before, arguably as equally a hard a position as anyone, you know, as important as any position on our staff, because he has the time with him. But Garrett is not just a strength conditioning coach. I mean, he does so much more with those guys. I mean, he is obsessed with their bodies and minds being right, and he'll stay and work, and so it's really, really important. I mean, again, I don't. I think it's really difficult for programs that don't have guys like him, because I mean, he is he was really with me here from day one. Once we got here and got going, and we knew we could get him in place and get through the hiring process, and he again, he immediately made an impact. And I think what he showed Kevin Punter and the guys, how serious he was about his job, I think that had an effect on, they had someone that they knew was really looking out for their best interests physically, and you can't really talk about Garrett without mentioning, you know, Chad. I mean, what he does. I mean, those two guys work together. They have one thing in mind, and that's to keep our guys healthy and keep them on the court. And I will tell you, good trainers are hard to come by too. And I'm telling you, we're blessed here. We got two of the very best that I think that, again, they're as good as anybody in the country.
Rick, I know you've said several times before that if you have any kind of number by your name this time of year, people are going to be excited to play you. But now that it is officially the #1 ranking, how much does that change things, and how do you get guys to maybe prepare for that without stressing them or making them too emotional?
Well, again, it's there, and again, what we do is, again, we're not going to change. We're going to go in and practice. And you know, I've heard Coach Lanier tell our players a number of times that I'm going to be the same whether we win or lose. And we're going to go look at the film, win or lose, and we're going to try to fix whatever problems we have. And the key is if they see the problems and they're willing to fix it. But I mean, you know, I mean, like I said, and a number, yeah. I mean, everyone's building resumes this time of year, and so they know that too. But I would like to think that we're going to keep our mind on the main thing, and that is, can we work at still trying to be the best team that we can be? And you do your preparation, like today's an important day for us, and we get there tomorrow, get ready to play, and go out and understand this is one of 30-some opportunities that we have.
Any other questions for Coach Barnes?
And Rick, do you think the way that Alabama, I mean, I know the team probably imagined they weren't going to win every game by a lot of points, and Florida gave you a good push down there, but do you think the way that Alabama game went ended up being kind of a reality check for some of the guys who now know for sure it's not going to be a waltz every night?
Well, I do think this. You know, when you go on the road, you know you expect it. But, you know, what we hadn't had in maybe this year is that home pressure. We haven't had it. And the fact that we got a taste of it, you'd like to think it's going to help us again going down the road, even though, I mean, it reminded me, that game reminded me of our game against Georgia last year. It was an intense game. It got down. You could tell they were playing with a lot of confidence, and, we weren't, we missed some shots, and it started affecting us. But then, and Admiral was, he has a tendency at times to get overly emotional when his shots aren't going in. But I thought, again, he affected the game. He came up with 11 rebounds, and then at the end he made 2 big baskets. Because I think when players get lost in the game, and it's natural when things aren't going well offensively, but again, I think his maturity showed up in the fact that he said he'd go affect it some other way. But I do think that home pressure of being on your home court with another team playing really well and doing good things as Alabama was doing is something that you have to deal with too. And like I said, it's been a while since we've had that, and so hopefully it's something that serves us well, because we're going to have it. I'm just telling you, we got the teams we got coming in here are going to come in here and expect to come into a great crowd that we have here, and they expect, just like we expect it tomorrow night, and we'll expect it everywhere we go. And teams come in, and as the season goes on, I think players get adjusted to that, and they settle in, and it gets down to your execution.
Charlie, last question.
Coach, you probably won't remember this. 2 years ago on Media Day, I asked you, what about this team are people not talking about? And your short answer was people shouldn't talk about the team because you hadn't done anything. You've done something now. Number 1 team in America. How would you answer that question now?
I would talk about our players, the ones that I'd mentioned that have that started for us, and then you got to talk about Grant Williams coming in and the guys that have come in behind them, where they've had a group of guys out in front of them that helped start it. And but like I said, we're all proud of these guys. We are, and the fact that we're proud of is the number 1 ranking is a byproduct of what they put into it, and it's just not during the season. This year round. Like I told him yesterday, in another 60 days, 70 days, we're going to be working on next year. We're going to rebuild again with another team. So it's all fleeting, but that's why you've got to grasp it, and you got to hold on to it. You got to want to make the most of every day, and not have any regrets when it's all said and done. But and it's not just what you do physically, it's what you do mentally, and it's how if you're able to block out all the things that can keep your team from being the best team it can be. And so when you look at it, what they've done up to this point, I think they would say this, that it's nice, but it's not the final product. I don't think there's any question these guys truly want to. There's a lot of winners. There's a lot of winners in a lot of things, but there's only one winner at the end. And I would be lying to you if I didn't think these guys would want me to say, hey, we want to be the winner. But we've still got work to do that.
Thank you, Coach.
All right, thank you, guys.